Well, hey, welcome to Crosspoint. My name is Kurt, and I'm thrilled that you are tuning in with us today. If you're here for the first time and you're looking for some hope or encouragement, or you're just trying to figure some things out about faith, or even if Jesus is worth your time, let me tell you, you are in the right place. Crosspoint is uniquely designed to help people find their way to God and for people who don't have it all together. So welcome. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. Either way, we're glad you're here today as we wrap up our series, Spark Ideas That Ignite. And I think you're gonna absolutely love today as we have one of the most loved and talked about guests ever in the history of Crosspoint, Ann Smith. Yes, the legendary Ann Smith is with us today, so I hope you'll stay tuned. Now, before we hear from Ann, we would love to hear from you. In fact, if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to our digital connection card. And if you'll take a minute to fill this out, you can let us know if there's something you'd like us to pray for, ask questions, or even if we can help you take a next step this week. Check that out. Hit the submit button when you're done. And if you submit this for the first time, this connection card will drop a gift in the mail this week to you just as a way of saying thank you for joining us today. Now, there's a bunch of amazing events happening here over the next couple weeks that we do not want you to miss. So here's the top 3 things for you to know this week. First, our annual series, At the Movies, starts next weekend. Believe it or not, this is the 11th year and running for the At the Movies teaching series. And so throughout the next few weeks, we're gonna be taking a look at the meaning behind some of the biggest movies of the year, the fibers of faith that we find on the big screen. Next weekend, we're gonna be taking a look at the summer blockbuster movie, Barbie. Any Barbie fans out there? Oh man, I tell you what, one of the cool things about the Barbie movie is if you're a fan of Barbie, you're gonna love this movie, and if you're not a fan of Barbie, you're going to love this movie as well. Now, one of the cool things about this series is the free movie tickets. Yeah, you heard that right. All first-time guests and those that bring them are taking home some free movie tickets. So invite a friend, a neighbor, a coworker anytime over these next 6 weeks. Join our in-person or online services, and you and they will get free movie tickets, and you're gonna have a blast. And even if they don't enjoy church, you're gonna get to go to the movies. So a great opportunity to invite your friends and neighbors. Also next weekend, families, we've got some exciting things for you as we look forward to celebrating Back to School weekend next weekend, August 3rd and 6th. Not only is this Move Up weekend where our kids will be promoted to their new environments and Crosspoint kids and students, but we also have tons of fun in store for all ages. So buckle up, here we go. Here's all the things that are happening this week. On Friday, August 4th, we have Carpool Cinema. It's gonna be back at the Crosspoint parking lot with the brand new movie, Super Mario Brothers. The lot opens at 8, so come early, tailgate your heart out with your family, friends, your neighbors, and the movie will start at dusk. We hope to see you there. And then on Sunday, August 6th, there's gonna be a back to school bash from 11:30 to 1 right here at the Crosspoint campus in the parking lot with inflatables, free cone ice, games, tie-dye. It's gonna be fun for all and specifically designed with families in mind. So for those of you choosing to join us online, this is a great opportunity to come connect in person, have some fun with the Crosspoint tribe, whether it's the Carpool Cinema or the Back to School Bash. And then finally, here's a cool and simple opportunity to change a life. On Thursday, August 10th, we're gonna be hosting a blood drive right here at the Crosspoint campus from 4:30 to 7:30 on our Thursday evening before the early weekend service. It's a quick, easy way to make a real difference in our community, and you can change a life by giving life in the Crosspoint parking lot. One donation can save up to 3 lives. So sign up for a time slot today at the event page, crosspointweb.org/blood drive. All right, we have got a great service for you today. One of my good friends and my mentors, Ann Smith, is with us today. And I want to bring you a conversation that she and I had earlier this week that I think is going to spark some pretty amazing things, not only in your life, but perhaps in those in your circle of influence, the people you interact with each and every day. So grab a cup of coffee, your favorite beverage, and let's go pay a visit with Ann. Well, Crosspoint, so excited to be able to bring a conversation with Ann. Thank you for joining us, Ann. Every time we talk, you are working on new ideas, and you have one that you've been wrestling through that I think will help us process through what it means to maybe create some change and spark in our world. Let's talk about this idea you're working on right now.
Well, for some time now, I've been working on this idea of a language that does not require words. Now, what all that means, I'm not sure yet because I'm in process with this. But I've been thinking about it, that there is a language that does not require words. And what does that mean? We are so much into words in our culture. I mean, it's everybody's talking. It seems that everybody's talking, nobody's listening, really. But words are so much a focus of ours. And I'm convinced that words are sometimes get in the way. And it's this thing, this spirit about us, the vibes we give off. Kurt, you know, and I know that if a person's words and their vibes are not in harmony, we know which one people are going to take away. It will not be the words, it will be the vibes. If I am saying all of the right things, but in my spirit I am feeling that this person is an irritation, I need to get out of this, I need to do whatever, they are going to pick up on that rather than paying attention to whatever words I may be saying that are really good. Yeah. I really believe that we need to give attention to the vibes we give off. And by vibes, I mean spirit. At this stage of my life, I am so focused on guarding my spirit. If I don't care how accurate my theology is, or I don't care how accurate my thinking is, if my spirit is wrong, I do damage to the work of the kingdom and I do damage to relationships. I just believe that there's something that goes way, way beyond words. In fact, it just popped into my head a few minutes ago. I hadn't even thought about this in relationship to this, but I was thinking about the woman who came up behind Jesus when he was the crowd was around and everything. She didn't say a word. She just touched the hem of his garment. But her vibes were, I need help. I am desperate. I mean, her vibes were giving off this message, and he listened to that and picked up on that message and responded to that woman. And so I had not put that together until just now, as a matter of fact. So I'm still very much in the process with this. But I find that people respond to my spirit. And I need to guard that spirit. I need to make sure that it is loving, accepting, non-judgmental, that it brings the Spirit of Jesus Christ to the thing. Last week before last, I guess, I was in Florida, and there was a woman that was a friend of my niece I'd never met before, but my niece had told her that she wanted us to meet. She wanted us to meet each other. So we both had COVID, and once we got past the contagious stage, we made an appointment to get together and have a glass of lemonade together. So this woman in her 60s, I would guess, she walked into this room where we were the only two people in there. My niece and I were the only two people in there. And she walked into the room and she looked over at me and she said, threw up both hands and said, "This is not what I expected." And it just struck me as really funny. I know, what was she expecting? She knew my age because my niece had told her I was 98. And so she knew my age, but she had this expectation. We had the most incredible hour-and-a-half conversation because she was picking up on the fact that I live with hope, I live with joy, I live with peace, she sensed that there was something in me that gave me something. And so she said, you almost make me believe there's hope for the world. So she was picking up on vibes rather than, but the words. One of the other things that I really do believe is that when words and vibes are in harmony, it's dynamite. It's contagious. Something happens. But so often our words and our spirit are not in harmony with each other.
Why do you feel that we err toward words? I mean, we live in a culture that wants to be heard, that wants to be recognized and seen, but we give verbiage over perhaps or action, behavior.
We all want to be heard. I don't believe there's a person on the face of the earth. And the thing is, if we don't feel heard, we don't feel loved. There are several things I think that contribute to that. One is that we we are a nation of people who want to find answers, but we want to give answers. And so we often do not listen because we're thinking about what we're going to say. We want to give rather than receive. Listening is one of those things that is so critical. And I think until we learn to listen well, we will not give off the right vibes. We can't. Because it's all about me. It's what I want to say, what I want to give to you, what I feel you need to do. If you share in listening, if you tell me something and I immediately try to give you an answer of how to fix it, I've not listened. I am trying to meet my needs of needing to tell you what to do rather than really paying attention. Listening is a gift. It's a gift that we do not hone. We do not give attention to it. Rachel Rimond says, listening creates a sanctuary for the homeless parts of the other person. We're more about feeling at home than we are about helping the other person to feel at home. So I think that's one of the things that also, I think we approach this as if answers are always easily available. And so we approach it with that in mind. But I think everybody wants to be heard. And a part of that leads me to another thing that I really believe. I believe that everybody is eager for in-depth conversations that matter, conversations that deal with life and that deal with this journey that we're on. But nobody knows how to get it started. And so we sit around and we talk about celebrities, we talk about sports, we talk about the weather, we talk about problems, we talk about, and some people just simply talk about the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And they're pessimistic and they're just oozing their pessimism. But people really, if you will give them a chance, they want to talk about what matters. But we don't know how to get it started. And so we end up just talking about things that really don't matter.
Would you say a lot of times that has to do with the reality that we don't listen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I think it's because we don't listen. And when we listen only to the words. We don't listen to what's behind the words. We don't try to pick up on what the person is telling us with body language, with their vibes that they're giving off. I sometimes sit in it's also our fear, before I say this, it's our fear of being known. We want to be known, but we're afraid to be known. We want to be heard, but we are afraid nobody's really going to listen. But I sometimes will sit in a group of people. I can be sitting in church, for instance, and I'll be thinking, wow, if all of the energy used in hiding were used for something constructive, for the work of the kingdom, we could change the world. But we use up so much of our energy in hiding. We want to be known, but we're afraid to be known. We want to be heard, but we're almost afraid to be heard. Listening involves the whole person. It's not just the words. Words are important, but there's something that goes beyond words. This is interesting. My mother had probably a 3rd or 4th grade education. She'd never worked outside the home. I mean, she had 5 kids, and that was a major job. And I came from I would not even say a middle-class family at all. I mean, we really, education was not a part of life. But my mother had probably a 3rd or 4th grade education. But after I went to Japan, she wanted to visit me in Japan. She did not own a house. She did not own a car. She really had nothing. She did laundry to earn her keep so that she could have food to eat. She did laundry. But my mother wanted to visit us in Japan. She just wanted so much to do that. She sold her sewing machine, which she did own, and she sold everything she had, and she bought a round-trip ticket on a freighter to go to Japan, 2 weeks on a freighter. And we told her that we'd do our best to, she'd have a place to live and food to eat, and we'd do our best to give her $10 a month she could spend any way she wanted to. She came out and stayed with us. But what I want you to know is that my mother spoke not one word of Japanese, not one word. I would follow her. We'd walk to church every day. The church was right on the ocean there, and we lived in a old farmhouse down the dirt road there, and it was a dirt road leading down to the church, and the thatched roofs on either side, but lots of children on this street. My mother would start to church, and the children would all come out and walk with her to church. And they'd go to Sunday school. And they would laugh and talk and have the best time, and neither one knew what the other one was saying. Not one thing. She went to kindergarten every day and taught the children English. She'd say, nose. Now you say it, nose. But she had this way of connecting with people without words. When she left, she had to leave because there was no heat in our house and the winters were too hard for her because she was up in age. When she left, the train platform was filled with Japanese people. I mean, I have no idea how many were there. And it's just the old steam train. The doors were open, the windows were up, and she was standing in the door, and they were hanging onto her. And one woman ran the full length of the platform to where there was this drop off, hanging onto my mother. And people were weeping. She never learned any Japanese. They knew no English, but they communicated. Now, I cannot explain that to you except it was the spirit. They knew she wanted to know. They knew she wanted to be a part of their lives. They knew she loved them. They knew all of this, and they responded in kind. And I can't explain it, but no words. No words. But people were weeping on that train platform because she was leaving. She had been there 18 months. And they were weeping because she was leaving. And she was weeping because she was leaving. I hesitate to say this because it's not about me. It's about the God who dwells in me, and the more I learn, I want to discover what it's like to be His presence, to be His love, to be His care, to be His concern when I am with someone and that they feel it.
You said something in our earlier conversation that we have a thirst and a longing for answers and knowledge. And it gets in the way sometimes of us sensing and feeling what the Spirit may be doing right in our midst.
Oh, I think it's easy for us to want answers more than we want God. We have this. We are a product of a culture where logic and reason are everything. And we miss so much because we are not present. How often, Kurt, let me ask you this. How often are you with somebody who's totally present?
Ooh, that's a great question. Probably not as often as I would like.
Yeah.
Because often we're in a dialogue, we're pressed on time. We need to communicate what I feel or what the other person feels. We need to get to a solution so we can move on and get to the next problem. Yeah. Whether it's a personal relationship, work relationship,
whatever
engagement
it
with
is.
somebody in the neighborhood, in the community.
Yeah. But to be totally present, to not be watching the clock, to not be thinking about what you want to say, to not be trying to find an answer or a solution, to just shift into neutral and be totally present, that is rare.
Yeah.
That is rare.
So our world over the last 4 years changed with COVID.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we had a chance to reset, to reclaim, which our family has found some of those. We discussed some of those in our earlier conversation of moments that we have around the table in the evenings where we just spend time together and it lingers and goes on. As the world's reopened, we've kind of just got back to our old ways. How much of our busyness and our activity in our life do you feel gets in the way of us being able to express ourselves without words?
I will tell you that when I first came back to the States to live after 30 years away from our culture, I was blown away. I expected, of course, to fit right in, which I did not fit. But I expected to fit right in. But there were several things that just bumfuzzled me. The church, for instance, would have times of fellowship. But they'd come together and spend time together and walk away and not know any more about each other than they knew when they came. And this puzzled me. It was not what I call fellowship. It was, you spend time together, but it's not that. That really, really puzzled me. I have a fear for the American culture that has been with me ever since I returned to live in this culture, which has now been more than 40 years since I've been back in it. But I have this fear that we're going to end up as a nation of people whose lives are filled with activity but experience nothing. Do you ever watch people eat? It's all gone. Who takes 2 hours to eat a plate of food? Yeah. Because the conversation is so enriching.
Yeah.
I observe that sometimes people will hurry up to finish one game so they can start another one. It's always, what's next? I can't wait to get to the next thing. And you miss all of the richness of what is here in this moment. We don't treasure the moment. Years ago, I stopped taking photos. I used to, when we first went to Japan, everything was new and it was just so, and I wanted to share it with the people back home. I took thousands of slides. That was back when slides were popular, of course. There were no cameras where you just snap a picture and text it to somebody. I took so many pictures, but I finally realized one day that I was so caught up in getting the right moment that I missed the moment totally. If it was a sunset I was trying to get, I just waiting for that perfect moment to get that photograph. And I missed the awe and the wonder of sitting there and letting that sunset just come into my total being.
Yeah.
Or we do that with people. We don't treasure that moment that will never come again, and you can never duplicate any experience. That's another thing we do. We have a real good experience, we try to duplicate it. You can't duplicate experiences. You have only this moment, this time. My conversation with you right now, this will never happen again. Never happen again. Yeah. And so it's treasuring. I've come to celebrate the temporary. That's another thing about our culture. We don't celebrate the temporary. Somebody moves into the community, and they say, oh, well, we're only going to be here 6 months. So I'm just not going to get involved, and I'm not going to build real strong relationships, because then I just have to leave them. And I don't want the pain of saying goodbye to somebody I've built a good relationship with. Duh. What is life? Everything is temporary in this world, and you can never duplicate this. But don't miss it because you're afraid of what you're having to give it up. Yeah. Loss is not something that we welcome. that's what it is. It's both and. So, can I tell you about an experience on a plane? This was quite some years ago when I first started dealing with Celebrate the Temporary. I got on the plane and I had a lot of work to do. And I had my work with me, and I took the window seat, and I got all my work out, made sure that it was obvious that I was going to be occupied. And a very attractive young woman, I would say probably 35 or 40 years of age, got on the plane and took the aisle seat. I greeted her, but then I went immediately. I put my nose in my book that I was working on and wanted to communicate that I was not open to conversation. Well, that went well for a little bit, except that she was reading a book and she needed to go to the restroom, and she laid the book down, flat like this so that I could see the title, and the title was so fascinating. And before I could stop myself, I said, "Is the book as interesting as the title?" And so this opened the door for conversation. I had the most interesting conversation with this young woman. She was Catholic. She was feeling guilty because she was in the midst of a divorce. She was a commercial airline pilot. She was all of these things, and we got engaged in this conversation of dealing with all that was going on in her life. And I don't know her name. I don't know her phone number. I sat there, and there was a feeling inside of me said, "You need to get her name, her phone number. You need to stay in touch." And God said to me, "That's not what you need to do. You know you. You know if you get her name and her address or phone number, whatever it is, if you get that information, you'll spend the next 10 years feeling guilty for not being in touch."
Yes, I'm just like you, Ann.
You'll spend the next 10
The
years
next 10
feeling
years.
guilty for not
Yes.
being in touch. I put her here in this seat for this engagement with the two of you, talking about me and talking about how I journey with people through the hard times, and but you can trust me. There are other people in this world. I'm going to bring other people into her life who will feed what you did here. Celebrate the temporary. That was the beginning of my celebrating the temporary.
So if we're going to talk about doing this, because we all have lives that are busy.
Yeah.
And those of us watching, those of us sitting in the room, we have tasks to get completed, kids to raise, families to take care of. You find just ordinary ways through when you're walking, when you're at the mall. How do you, in those moments, invite God into that moment where you can begin to, people can begin to sense maybe an aura, God can use you, because perhaps every moment that we're in, God has placed us there, not just for the thing we think we're there for, but to communicate his presence to someone. How do you do this?
There's a reason why. Well, for one thing, I talk to myself in my head, and I pray. You don't have to say the words to pray. I happen to believe, I have come to believe over the years, that you never touch, this is a Peggy Milken statement, by the way, you never touch another person so lightly that you don't leave an imprint. So I've come to believe that even the person I pass on the street, something happens. We're not aware of it. I'm not aware of it. You're not aware of it, whoever it is who's passing me. But somehow we are changed because we are both human beings. And we are in this world, and we are somehow connected, even though we don't know it and we don't acknowledge it and we don't honor it. But we are connected just simply because we're human beings. So I try to say in my head, God, let me give off the right vibes when I pass this person. I will occasionally take a moment to experiment, just focus on a person in the mall or something. And it's interesting, sometimes they'll come and sit down beside you and tell you their whole life story.
Just because you've begun to focus on them.
Because I focus on them.
But also invited God into that moment to perhaps
Well, yeah, I
use
say,
you.
God, let me give off vibes that this person, that I recognize the value of this person. It's recognizing that there's no such thing as a worthless person. Everybody. Also, the other thing that is important, I think, is we need to really grasp the idea that every person on the face of the earth, bar none, every person has something to teach me. And I need to approach this person as, God, what do you want to teach me through this person? But we are taught in sharing the gospel that we have everything to give and nothing to receive. We're not taught it verbally, but we are taught it sort of, I don't know, subconsciously.
Yes, yeah. That you have something that someone else needs, not recognizing that they have a story that perhaps we need to connect. Why
Absolutely.
the gospel so meaningful.
Absolutely. So it's where the joy of life comes from, really. I have 24 hours in the day. You have 24 hours in the day. And it's a matter of using them, allowing God to use them through us in a way that is going to benefit the other person, but also it's going to benefit me. We think we reward drivenness. We reward activity. We reward, somehow we feel like we have more value if we're just busy. It's learning the preciousness of life, the gift of life, that God dwells in Ann Smith, imperfect as she is. He dwells in me, and he wants to live in me in a way that it's going to benefit the other person, but it also benefits me. That's where the joy comes from, is when I don't miss the experience. I just want to get through it so I can get to the next task that's waiting for me to do. I think maybe I might have shared before, one of my favorite statements by Eugene Peterson is the sacredness of being inconvenienced for the sake of nurturing others. I had never put sacred and inconvenient in the same sentence in my life. I mean, if it's inconvenient, it's not sacred. That's the culture.
Yeah.
But the culture is, it really, if we really, really, really let Jesus dwell in us the way he wants to dwell in us, inconvenience will not even be a word. Even when Jesus was on the way to something that was very, very important, he still took time. When somebody called out, he knew this would be there when he got there, we're increasingly being shaped into his image. We're not perfect. I am a master at blowing it.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
And to hear you say that at 98 years, and to recognize that that's okay, and that God can even work in the midst of that and continue to shape and form you.
He's not looking for somebody perfect to work through. He's looking for somebody who's open and who is willing to let him be in control. And that's what I long for, is I guard my spirit. We are so caught up on issues and differences and things that separate us and all of that. When really we are all dealing with this thing of what it's like to live this life on this earth and learn what we're supposed to learn and be what we're supposed to be. We all long for that. We all long for feeling, that we make a difference. That the fact that I've lived on this earth it does make a difference. In fact, we cannot not make a difference. We do make a difference one way or another. And it's just a matter of what kind of difference we make. And that's where I say this language without words is more important than the words we say. Words are important. I'm not negating the value of that. But what I long for is that we emphasize the spirit, the presence, the celebrating the temporary, the being present for this moment, and then let the words fit into that rather than having the words and trying, and so often failing to have the spirit fit into the words. I don't know. It's a journey. It's exciting.
Yes, it is.
It's exciting. There's so much yet to learn.
I've been Let's give it up for this band. And can we make some noise for Ann Smith? My word, I tell you what, she can hear you right now as she is watching. And I don't know about you, but man, I'm ready. I mean, as that song said, am I ready? I'm like, how do I go out? There's something about hearing from Ann and just being inspired by the way that you and I have the opportunity to actually make a difference in the world. And I want to, as we kind of wrap this up, I want to give us a couple next steps. And before I give those to you, I want to kind of connect why this theme, this spark, is so important, this idea of a language without words. Over the past couple weeks, I ran into this recent study from the Gallup organization, and here's what they said. They said, Gallup has documented sharp declines in church attendance, confidence in organized religion, and religious identification in recent years. Americans' beliefs regarding God, angels, heaven, hell, and the devil have also fallen by double digits since 2001. Now, much of the decrease on these fronts has actually happened in the last 4 years. In fact, they go on to say this, still, U.S. adults believe in each entity remains at the majority level, and regular, look at this phrase, churchgoers remain largely resolute in their beliefs. And I was reading this article and I thought, oh my gosh, I think one of the things that's happened over the last few years is those that are churchgoers have continued to maintain a belief, but one of the things I've experienced is those who have generally leaned away from God, from faith, from Jesus, are leaning even further away. And this is a burden of mine. And as Ann and I were talking, I mean, this is a burden of hers, of how do we give off vibes to this world that doesn't see that Jesus is relevant, that faith is relevant? How do we live in such a way that they see something that they want to be a part of? And, here at Crosspoint, I mean, we're here to help people find their way to God. And so, if you're, a guest with us and you're trying to figure that out, or you're tuning online for the first time, you need to know you're in the right place. I mean, we're a place for people who don't have it all together, and a place for you to kind of take steps at your own pace to figure that out. And if you're a partner around here, or you've taken the step to receive Jesus and to begin to follow, you're now a part of this mission of saying, how do we as a community help people find their way to God? And so I want to give us a couple next steps. I mean, I'm confident when you listen to Ann, I mean, there's probably as many walkouts and things that have landed with us as there are people in this room and tuning in online right now. But I want to give us some very specific walkouts, some things that we can say, okay, what do I do with this week? And so I want you to go ahead and take out your devices. If you filled out the connection card earlier, you should be at that next steps page. If you didn't, you can go ahead and do that real quick. You can scan this QR code and do the logistics real quick, hit next, and you'll see a whole bunch of next steps. And these aren't for me. These are for us to say, okay, what am I going to do as a result of what I heard? And so, perhaps for some of us, the very first one is just saying, hey, this week I'm going to pay attention to my vibes. I'm going to pay attention to the spirit that comes out of me. And I'm also going to be willing to be inconvenienced for the sake of someone else. And if that just touched you, maybe right now it's just saying, hey, I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to mark that. I'm going to be diligent about that. Over the next 6 weeks, we have huge opportunity for us to invite people that perhaps might be leaning away from God, that feel like Jesus is irrelevant. And we have a number of opportunities. In fact, this is why we do the At the Movies series each and every year. And we're beginning this next weekend. And, not only do we give free movie tickets away, part of the reason we do that is, we're giving you like a slow pitch. We're lobbing an opportunity to say, hey, if you have somebody in your life feels God's irrelevant, Jesus is irrelevant, you might just say, hey, you get a free movie ticket. Worst case, they walk away and don't like church, but they get to go to a movie for free. And you're going to get one as well. And so perhaps over the next weekend or the following week, it's just saying, hey, I'm going to be here. And you can make that a next step. Say, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here to be a part of that. Or I'm going to invite someone to be a part of that. I'm going to intentionally say, who in my life perhaps needs hope or needs to experience what I've experienced? Next Friday's Carpool Cinema. We're going to have the chance to gather in the parking lot, have fun. And maybe for you're like, man, that sounds like a great idea. Maybe your next step is to say, hey, I'm going to be a little inconvenienced so I can just be present out in the parking lot when others from our community come. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there because you never know who might show up that you might be connected to, and they may be the touch that you need. Maybe that's the next step for you this week, and say, hey, I'm going to be there Friday night. Maybe it's saying, I'm going to invite someone. I'm going to invite some friends and family that might not walk into this space, but they'll walk into a parking lot and connect with this community and see that, hey, these are just real people, ordinary people like me.
Next weekend's kickoff weekend, back to school bash, all kinds of opportunities to have fun. Again, maybe it's an opportunity to invite someone or just to be inconvenienced and say, hey, I'm going to show up. I'm going to be present, for the after services bash outside with, inflatables and Kona ice. I'm just going to be there to create a spirit and an energy and an aura, and you never know how God might use you in that space. I'm telling you, a lot of the activity that God does has to do with our availability. In fact, I want to make it real personal for a moment. I want you to, again, if you've got your device out, I want you to just write 3 names down. In fact, I want you to ask yourself, who are 3 people in my circle of influence? In fact, there might be names just coming across the front of your mind right now. Who are 3 people in my circle of influence that just need some hope right now? Who are 3 people that perhaps need to experience something like I've experienced, the hope that God has begun to place in me that, God, I just want to pray for this week. I just want to ask, would you write those 3 names down? And would you begin to pray that God would, in some unique way, as Ann said, when we begin to pray, it's amazing how we begin to have opportunities to actually converse, start conversations, hear a story, listen, find someone's location, be able to share the hope that we have, invite. I'll be amazed at what God might begin to do as you write 3 names down. In fact, for some of you, you may actually be here tuning in online right now because somebody cared enough to write your name down. And they said, hey, I just want to be that person for you, and that's why you're here. Don't ever underestimate the power of how God can use you in someone's life, even with the lightest touch. In fact, I loved that phrase that Ann mentioned from Peggy Millen. She said, you never touch another person so lightly that you don't leave an imprint. Let me tell you something that happened at the end of this interview that we had with Ann earlier this week. It was a couple of our production team members, and as we wrapped the interview up and shut the cameras down, and the team, the 2 guys that were with me, started packing up the equipment, Ann said to them, she's like, oh my gosh, guys, you've been on the floor watching on your knees, behind cameras this whole time. Thank you for, just sitting and listening. And of course, these guys, like, we had the chance to be here in person. To sit here and just soak this in. And she said, no, I just want to thank you. And one of the guys, Drew, said, no, Ann, I actually want to thank you. And she said, oh, well, why is that? And he said, well, I wouldn't actually be right here if it wasn't for you. To which she sat back and she said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you were actually at Crosspoint a few years ago in person, and there was something I was going through, and as you were talking about driving around the 465 loop in Indianapolis, and you were working on a decision that was in front of you, and just out of the blue, you passed a billboard, a phrase you'd seen many times, but it caught your attention, and you looked at a billboard that said, just do it. It was a Nike billboard. And you just felt like God used that billboard in the midst of this decision to say, hey, just do it. Go, this is my message to you, just do it. And I was dealing with the decision of what I was going to do with my career and whether I was going to step out of what I was doing and move forward in a new direction that I didn't know where it was going to lead me. And when you said that, I just felt like that was God saying to me, just do it. And because of that, it actually landed me here today working with the production team. It never would have happened if you wouldn't have had that touch in my life. And Ann, of course, raised her hands like she did in the video a couple times. She said, oh, my word, look at how God uses us. She said, I don't remember it. And Drew said, well, I just made it a note that if I ever had the chance to have audience with you, I'd be sure to thank you. You never touch another person so lightly that you don't leave an imprint. I want you to think about how God wants to use you this week. Oftentimes, it's not going to require words. As we close, I asked Ann to pray for us. And through the beauty of communication and technology that transcends the airwaves, we're going to go back to Ann's place and let her pray a prayer of blessing over us.
It's been a joy to be with you, and I hope there's been some little something that has triggered you so that you will begin to think about it. But I'd like to close by praying for you because God loves you so very much and wants to journey with you on this incredible journey. So pray with me, please. God, our hearts are overflowing with joy because of your presence in our lives. So often we are unaware of your nearness. We're unaware of your voice. So often we are really not as attentive as you would like for us to be. but you are always there, eager. When we turn our face toward you, you come running toward us, and we are so grateful for that. God, teach us that the more difficult life becomes, the more important and absolutely necessary it is for us to find things to celebrate and to allow your joy to fill us. God, we live in a culture that is passionate about being happy, but never making a distinction between happiness and joy. Happiness depends on the circumstances of our lives, but joy depends on your presence in our lives and how you get us through every situation that comes. You journey with us and you fill us with gratitude. You fill us with joy because you are with us and you are journeying with us no matter how difficult the circumstances may be. So God, teach us to search for those things to give thanks for, to be grateful for, to celebrate. Teach us how to truly, truly celebrate your presence in our lives. God, it's overwhelming to think that this very Spirit of God dwells in Ann Smith, imperfect as she is, as ignorant as she is about many of the things. Help us to embrace this journey and to learn daily to be increasingly shaped into the image of Jesus Christ. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So God, will you come right now as we pray and touch each person who is listening at that place where they most need to be touched by your Spirit. We are all different. We're all at different places on our journey. We're all dealing with different things. Touch us at that place where we most need to be touched. Let our vibes be such that we will have such faith we can just reach out and touch the hem of your garment and give you a chance to respond to us in ways that will make all the difference in the world in our lives. So thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing us to be your children and to allow us to entertain your presence in our lives. Let it spill over and bless others, we pray. In the name of Christ, who makes it all possible. In his wonderful, wonderful name we pray. Amen.
Ann, thank you so much for your time with us. Let's give Ann a hand. Let's make some noise for Ann being with us. She is not going to hear you, but she's going to feel this in her spirit today. And as you do that, let's stand. If you're in the room, we're going to sing one more song. And if you're tuning in at home, we'd love you to stand, sit, whatever you want to do as we celebrate the joy God has brought. Ann, thank you so much. Thank you. It's so good to be with you.
Kurt.
There's a radical love that can enter your life, and it's literally waiting for the chance to open your eyes. It's a radical thought to surrender your mind, giving all of your doubt and fear away, make space for the light. Feel the
Well, hey, we hope you're experiencing that kind of joy today and you're feeling that vibe out of this place because that's what we believe God created us for. And I hope you find yourself in awe that God actually wants to dwell in you and His grace in you. And when that happens, I'm telling you, there is something magical that comes out of your life and affects the circles of influence in your life. Now, if you made a choice to take advantage of God's goodness and grace, the grace Jesus brings to us by taking a step to trust Jesus as your Savior and your leader today, we would love to celebrate that with you, and you can let us know that on your connection card. And if you'd like somebody to pray with you today, you can simply text the keyword need prayer to 317-834-7373, and a member of our prayer team will be in touch with you this week. Now, for those of you who are givers around here, I just want to say thank you. You make all of this possible through your generosity to the Joy Box. And if you want to become a giver, you can go to the Give button at the top of the screen or at crosspointweb.org/give, and know that when you do that, you're joining on what's happening around here, and you are actually touching people's lives, and you're empowering the message and crazy hope and goodness that comes out of this place. And I personally want to thank you for that. So we can't wait to see you next time for At the Movies 11. Have an incredible week.
God of hope, fill our hearts with joy.